Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Well, Tony, you know how in the spring you're looking for the first robin and it's the sign, okay, spring has arrived. Well, Tony, the first college football magazine has hit the newsstands. College football season must be right-ish around the corner-ish.
Indeed, it is ish right around the corner, and the first magazine is out, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Lindy's National College Football Magazine is out, and my annual practice is late May, usually around in the mid-20s, or even actually this year sooner than that. I start going to Barnes & Noble like every afternoon because, I don't live too far away, and it's, go and walk back to the magazines like, oh, great, it's still not here, I'll be back tomorrow, and nothing yet, and it's so sad. It's very sad, and I'm sure like the people start to recognize me as like, here comes that weird guy just walking back to the magazines, and then looks like he's going back to the coffee aisle, the coffee counter, and it's like, nope, not even going to go do that, and then he just looks at the magazines and walks back out, and then finally on, I don't know, Friday or so, I walked back there, and there, lo and behold, Lindy's was finally in, so my long national nightmare is now over. And then what the next step is going to Barnes & Noble and looking for a Big Ten edition of either, it's usually, I'll get whatever one is first, Athlon or Lindy's National Mag, and then I'll get the other one of the Big Ten magazine, and the conference magazines come out in a few weeks. Then, of course, get Phil Steele sent in the mail at some point. That order has already been in. The digital copy of the Phil Steele magazine, Tom, should get to us like June 6th or something. So we'll have that to talk about as well. But I thought, you know what? Let's talk about this magazine and how wrong they are about everything. Because this is, Tom, this is outrageous. And this is the danger of being first. You're going to be wrong about everything. But now they do have Ohio State picked to win the Big Ten and make the playoffs. And so, Tom, let's start there with the playoff predictions. Okay, because they've got the four buys, the four conference champions. Georgia ranked number 1, Ohio State number 2, Florida State number 3, Oklahoma State number 4. I had forgotten about Oklahoma State being a potential playoff option, but somebody has to come out of the Big 12, so congratulations there. And then the first round is Liberty at Texas, 12 at 5, 11 Missouri. I hadn't thought about them. At 6, Oregon. 10, Notre Dame. At 7, Ole Miss. 9, Alabama, Tom. At 8, Michigan. You've got, I believe, 5 SEC teams in the playoffs, 1 ACC team, 1 Big 12 team, 3 Big 10 teams, and a Notre Dame. I wouldn't mind seeing that Alabama-Michigan rematch. Michigan getting a home playoff game might be a bit of a stretch to me.
That does feel like a little bit of a stretch. I mean, if they're ranked ahead of Alabama, that means they're 10-2. You're probably not getting the 8 seed at 9-3. So that means they've got to beat either Texas, Oregon, or Ohio State, and then they've got to win all of the rest of their games. That feels high to me. That feels optimistic to me, let's say. I think that would be great. I think the idea of, we've seen some of the conditions that Ohio State, Michigan has been played in there over the years. Is it, sometimes it's what last year was probably in the 40s maybe. I mean, there was frost on the seats before the game, so it was pretty chilly in that morning. I would, it has snowed there during the Ohio State Michigan game. I would love to see Alabama playing in the snow. Like let's just see. We've been waiting for years and years and years. We've watched so many Outback Bowls and Citrus Bowls where Big Ten teams are going and playing in SEC conditions and on January 1st. I would love to see SEC teams coming north and playing in Midwest conditions on December 20th or whatever that is. The rest, I honestly, there are two takeaways here. Number one, when you say number 4 Oklahoma State, you don't mean they're picked to be number 4 in the country. You mean they're the 4th conference champion, which means they get one of the top 4 seeds in the tournament. So just to clarify that, Tony was not wrong there. I just want to make sure people understand that that's what we're talking about here, because I think that's still something that people have not completely wrapped their heads around. The other thing is, I'm looking at this and it's like, boy, there is not a ton of juice in these first round matchups other than Alabama at Michigan, like Notre Dame at Ole Miss. Yeah, okay, maybe that's a little bit interesting, but Missouri at Oregon, like those are not two helmets that I'm all that excited to see next to each other. Liberty at Texas, I'm not that excited to see next to each other. It feels like if you swap out Missouri for Penn State, and it's Penn State at Ole Miss and Notre Dame at Oregon, like that's more interesting to me. No offense to Missouri, who we just saw, and Missouri is a very good team, and Eli Drinkwitz has a very good program going. That's just not a very exciting brand to me to see in the playoff. But we'll see. We'll see who gets in, and if it's 5 SEC teams this year, well, won't everyone be excited for 5 SEC teams out of the 12 college football playoff teams?
I'm trying to figure out if this math works because Texas at as the 5 seed, we're going to assume they are ranked 3 or 4, which would mean just one loss to Georgia, and they would have beaten Michigan, but yet Michigan would probably have also lost to Oregon and Ohio State, so they're 3 losses and still hosting. I'm not sure if the math works out on that one. The quarterfinals, Oklahoma State versus Tennessee or versus Texas in the Fiesta Bowl. Peach, Georgia versus Michigan. Rose, Ohio State versus Ole Miss. Sugar, Florida State versus Oregon. It is amazing to me as I go through this how Georgia, 70 miles away, you get to go play in a bowl game. It's a fantastic advantage. These all just seem like standard bowl games, and that's kind of the reason for it. That's what they want, is you can maintain the bowl game atmosphere while also ramping it up. Anything strike you there? Ohio State versus Ole Miss is interesting in the Rose Bowl just because you never get to see those two teams. But everything else seems pretty standard.
Yeah, it does seem pretty standard. Other than, I will let you know when SEC team playing in the Rose Bowl feels standard. That's going to take a minute. Ohio State Ole Miss in the Rose Bowl is Ohio State in the Rose Bowl to start New Year's would be great. Sign me up for that. I would love to start 2025 in Pasadena. Georgia Michigan as a Peach Bowl. Yeah, as you said, it sure is nice how Georgia just plays home games in the college football playoff so often. Oklahoma State, Texas as a non-conference game is going to be a little weird. Florida State versus Oregon in the Sugar Bowl. No SEC team in the Sugar Bowl. That's also going to be weird. SEC team in the Rose Bowl, but not the Sugar Bowl. That's another one that's going to take a little getting used to. No Big 12 team or SEC team in the Sugar Bowl. But these are interesting matchups. These are, I think, some of the first round games. The novelty is going to be the on-campus setting. Yeah. I think the second round is where you're going to start having better games because some of the first round games are going to be fine. It's like NFL wildcard weekend where everyone gets all excited and it's like, well, how often are these teams actually advancing? They still have a whole bunch more work to do, but it's it's nice to be part of the process, nice to be part of the dance. But yeah, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Florida State, Oregon, like these are all really, really, these are good matchups. And if the Big Ten has 3 teams in the quarterfinals, I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure I see Michigan as an 8. I'm not sure I see Michigan beating an Alabama or someone like that in the first round. But if they do get 3 teams in the quarters, that's a pretty good year for the Big Ten.
Yeah, and so then you have the Final Four of Georgia over Texas in the Orange Bowl and Ohio State over Oregon in the Cotton Bowl. And if I'm reading this right, this may be the 3rd meeting between Ohio State and Oregon, unless Michigan drops to 8 because they lost to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. I don't know if that's because they don't have anything written about that, and they don't have a Big Ten championship game prediction, but it sure seems, if I'm reading this correctly, Ohio State goes 3-0 against Oregon, and beating them a 3rd time in the Final Four would, as we know, beating a team 3 times in 1 year, it's almost unheard of in college football. So good luck. I guess that means also, since it's never been done, like nobody's ever not done it as well. Like if you've been given the opportunity, and so that would be. I can't imagine. Oh, actually, all I can do is imagine what it's like to cover a game 3 times, like different venues every single time. But remember how well we felt we knew Georgia from watching like those 5 or 6 games leading up to that bowl game, that playoff game. It's like we really, now this is going to be like 4 times that because you're really watching that. But I would you be terribly shocked if Ohio State and Oregon play 3 times this year? Because I don't think I would be.
I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, I think those are two of the 4 to 5 best teams in the country, probably. So you're you're getting them once in Eugene. Unless something happens like the last time Ohio State was supposed to play in Eugene, but we're probably not going to have that again. So you should have one there, and they should be. I mean, they're projected as the 2 best teams in the Big Ten, and I certainly feel like there's a little bit of a gap between the top tier of the Big Ten, which is probably the top 2 teams, Ohio State and Oregon, and then there's a little step down to the next tier, which is your Michigans and Penn States, and maybe someone else like that. That's sort of how the over under on season win totals is structured as well. So I think there's a pretty decent chance we get to see them play in Indianapolis in the beginning of December, and then if they're 2 of the top teams in the nation, the third matchup just depends on where they're seated. I'm sure they will probably try and get a little creative to avoid having, setting up a rematch, a month after the last one in the quarterfinals, I would guess. But, once you get to the semis, you get to the semis. And, if these teams keep winning, and I think there's a decent possibility they can, yeah, I think you could absolutely see Ohio State, Oregon play 3 times. Realistically, Tony, over under on the number of times Ohio State and Oregon play this year, I think the realistic over under is 1.5, and I'm going over. 2.5 feels like you can't possibly bet the over on that as a unless you're getting incredible odds. But over under 1.5, how many times do Ohio State and Oregon play this year?
Yeah, that's exactly the number I would have set, and I would also take the over. And you're gonna have multiple opportunities to hit that over. So it feels like you'll see that. If I ask the same question about Ohio State and Michigan, I don't setting the over under at 1.5 seems too high. But you set it at 1, and it's like, what's the point?
Right. Yeah.
You're taking the
1.5. Yeah, I'd probably take the under because there's
2020.
Right. See, now we've both done it. Now we've both spoken that into existence. Yeah, I think I'd go over 1.5 on Ohio State, Oregon, and under 1.5 on Ohio State, Michigan, just because. And this is, I think, believing in Oregon more than it's not believing in Michigan. I just think Oregon's got a pretty good setup. Michigan's got a pretty tough schedule. Oregon's a pretty good team all around. Has not lost nearly as much as Michigan has. I struggle to see Michigan making the Big Ten championship game this year, and I struggle to see Michigan getting a good enough seed where, maybe the committee sets up number 8 Michigan, number 7 Michigan, something like that, against number 2 Ohio State in the second round. Maybe. I mean, they're certainly going to be looking for ways to goose the TV ratings a little bit. That would certainly be a way to goose the TV ratings a little bit. But, man, I think asking Michigan to either be one of the top 2 teams in the Big Ten this year or to, at minimum, win one national college football playoff game and then also get matched up with Ohio State, that's probably asking a lot based on what I think they're going to be this year. I think they're going to be good, but I don't think they're going to be great this year.
Yeah, and I'm just really quickly looking to find out the last time Ohio State and Michigan wasn't televised on Fox. So when was the last time ESPN had it? And I believe it was 2016. So if there's a way that the ESPN overlords could convince the committee, hey, just all you need to do is slide Michigan one spot over. You don't even have to do it logically because we know when you explain your reasoning for all of your rankings, everything changes from week to week on why you did what you did. So it wouldn't be a terrible surprise if ESPN was like, hey, we'd really like to have Ohio State, Michigan. We haven't had it in almost a decade, so let's go ahead and knock that one out.
Well, and also they may be trying to avoid a first-round rematch. They may be trying to, we've certainly seen the college basketball committee do this where there's a little bit of a wink and a nod and, oh, look at that. It just so happened that former coach is playing his old team in the second round if they both win. Now, we're not setting this up. We're just saying if both teams happen to win, look how neatly this has worked out. There's some precedent here there's a little bit of latitude, I'm sure, to avoid having teams play, for the second or third time in the first round. I'm sure you're going to try to avoid having Alabama play Ole Miss in the first round or something like that. Like you don't need to set up rematches. You don't need to set up intra-conference games in the first round. Part of the interest is the matchup between conferences, inter-conference matchups, as opposed to intra-conference matchups. So I'm sure they're going to have a little bit of latitude there. And yeah, if you could set up, if you could set this up where you just whatever, flip the Notre Dame, Ole Miss, and Alabama, Michigan games, and you set up Michigan as the number 7 team to play Ohio State, and then you set up potentially Ole Miss or Alabama playing Georgia in the next round. I don't know if those teams play Georgia during the regular season, but you're potentially setting up these historical matchups. Like maybe that's exciting to people. But yeah, I would imagine there's enough latitude there that they might kind of wink and a nod some of these things into existence.
So then the national championship game has Georgia flying all the way to Atlanta to face Ohio State, which they are predicting the Bulldogs with a 27-17 win over the Buckeyes. Again, tremendous scheduling, and you save so much on airfare if you're Georgia throughout these playoffs. And but they do have to fly. They would have to fly to Miami the game before to go to the Orange Bowl. So that's or the 10-hour drive, whatever it be. I'm sure if maybe you're getting like, what, we didn't have to drive to the last game and we won. Let's just let's not change anything, and let's drive to the Orange Bowl. So I think you're going to see a lot of people predicting Georgia and Ohio State. They're 1 and 2 in all of the preseason polls, most of the preseason polls. That one makes sense. You can't be like, boy, that's a crazy one. That's an outlier. And only 17 points for the Buckeyes, though. That's some hate.
Well, and here's something that's interesting that I don't think people. This is another one of these things I don't think people are thinking about yet in terms of fan support at that kind of a game. Of course, Georgia's playing right in its backyard, so of course it's much easier for Georgia fans to get there. But if Georgia's playing its first game at the Peach Bowl, and that's also a drive, then you don't have flights, you don't have hotels. Ohio State fans going out to Pasadena, however many Ohio State fans would go out to Pasadena in that case, and this is kind of another interesting, what is this going to look like? How is this going to impact? Are Ohio State fans going to decide, well, we'll save. I don't want to spend all my money on this because there's potentially 2 more games left. Which could also be, it's if Ohio State is in Pasadena and then Dallas and then Atlanta. Those are at least 2 flights. Some people, Tony, the ones with weak constitutions view Atlanta as a flight. Yep. You and I, we are road warriors. We know otherwise, but that's potentially 2 to 3 flights plus hotels plus game tickets. Eventually, people do run out of money. That is a thing that happens. The finances for most people are not functionally unlimited. So that will probably impact attendance at some of those in terms of Ohio State fans. Obviously, there are plenty of Ohio State alumni in the DFW area and the SoCal area. So you'll probably have plenty of folks there still. But, that's 2 to 3 flights, 2 to 3 hotels, 3 game tickets. Georgia, no flight on the first one, just a drive, just a game ticket, no hotels, no flights. Second one, you could drive, Georgia to, Atlanta to Miami is probably not all that much further. I know Florida's longer than you think, so it's probably further than it is to from Atlanta to Columbus, but it's not, that's also possibly a drive, and if you fly, you fly. Game tickets, a couple hotels, and you're done. And then another, right back to Atlanta for the national championship. You have Georgia fans really not spending anything or not spending much those first couple games, and also it's right in their backyard. So I would imagine that's a very, very, very pro-Georgia crowd because Ohio State fans are either not going to the first couple games, which seems unlikely, or you are going to have people who just do not have the money to do all 3 of those things. And that's probably most fans, that you're going to have to make a choice at some point. If you've got 3 flights, 3 hotels, 3 game tickets, that's asking a lot. But, that's one of those things that also I don't think people are thinking a ton about right now, until you start getting into the logistics of thinking through what this is going to involve to go follow your team through the playoff. And it's a lot.
It is a lot. But in all respect to the listeners and viewers, the same 25,000 people don't need to go to all 3 games. That it's a big fan base. You can, and that's why. Well, I'll wait. I won't go this game. I'm going to save it up for the national championship game or the semifinal game, and then if they win the semifinal game, I'm going to make whatever sacrifice I need to make to go ahead and go to the national championship game, because it's like, if they don't win in the quarters, they sucked anyway. So it's like, I'm not wasting my time on that one. I'll let the locals go to that game, or the people that can't get tickets or normally don't go to other places, or the ones who go everywhere. So I think you'll have enough to fill out the allotted whatever. And if they're in the Rose Bowl, that's we're talking, I don't know, 30,000 tickets or so for Ohio State fans. And if it is the Rose Bowl, that's a special place. It's its own unique thing. So I think they'll be okay there. But then I do believe, yes, we need to go to the Final Four. We need to go to the semifinal game. And then it's like, if they win that, another mortgage is fine, whatever it takes. But I can't cry for the people that are like, well, how am I supposed to go to every single game? It's like, you're not, if you want to, go ahead, but this isn't for the same people. This is for anybody that can go or wants to go, and for people who haven't been able to go. At some point in time, we may view the quarterfinals as the spring game for fans. Like, it's, you want to take your family to a playoff game, it's, you can get in and with tickets and airfare and popcorn for under $4,000. Like, that's a really good deal.
I like the fact that you, who would be going to all three, are like, people don't need to go to all three. Elitist Tony Gerdeman says that you don't deserve to do what he does every year. Hateful, Tony. Hateful.
I mean, I am the rare air. Like, don't try to keep up with me, because you're not going to make it. So there, congratulations to the Georgia Bulldogs on a national title. Hopefully this Brian Day doesn't get fired for losing that game. So then we move to some position rankings and where the Big Ten stands in all of these. And I want to talk about these top 25 lists and top 10 lists for positions. And start with the quarterbacks. Top 25 quarterbacks in the nation. Oregon quarterback Dylan Gabriel is number 2. Then you go all the way down to 17, Will Howard, the next best quarterback in the Big Ten, the number 2 quarterback in the Big Ten. Drew Aller at 18. Will Rogers, new Washington quarterback, at 19. As I'm going through all of these lists, I'm like, oh yeah, USC. Oh yeah, Washington. Like, these are new guys, new programs. They have Will Howard as the All Big Ten second team quarterback. Like, this one, I think if you're the quarterback in Ohio State's offense, you're going to be on one of those first 2 or 3 teams. And Drew Aller, for all of his faults, only threw 2 interceptions last year, had a decent year. Will Rogers, who knows what's going to happen there at Washington, but I don't think I have a problem with this list.
No, I don't have a problem with this list, and frankly, I look at this list where you've got Dylan Gabriel as the number 2 quarterback in the class, and I compare it to the 247 transfer portal rankings where Dylan Gabriel was ranked as the 11th best quarterback transfer prospect of the cycle. This feels a lot more representative of what I think Dylan Gabriel is going to be this year at Oregon than 11th best in the transfer portal cycle. I was looking at that for an upcoming morning show, and I thought, did he not transfer this year? Was that last year? Am I forgetting something? Did I miss him? And he's below Daquan Finn from Toledo, who transferred. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots below Will Howard. And Will Howard, I think, is going to do a solid job at Ohio State. I think those two might be, those two are probably a little closer than they are on this list, or they are on the 247 list. But that's Dylan. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to be very good. Everyone else, Will Howard, I think Will Howard's going to do a fine job. And if Will Howard is the 17th best quarterback in the nation this year, I think that's probably a very good thing for Ohio State. Ohio State does not need Will Howard to be the 3rd best quarterback in the nation. They just need him to be top 10, top 15-ish, and that's probably plenty given how good the defense is going to be, given how good the skill talent is everywhere else. I mean, am I wrong? I'm sure there are people who are going to look at that and say that is deeply disrespectful to Will Howard. I think if that's what they get out of Will Howard, that's probably going to be plenty good for them to reach a whole lot of goals this year.
Yeah, if he has the same passing year that Kyle McCord had, I think they're going to be just fine. and because he'll do some more stuff with the running game. I do wonder if he should be closer to Dylan Gabriel than he is to Drew Aller and Will Rogers. But that's also given a lot of credit to Ryan Day and what he has been able to do with quarterbacks. And then of course you look at Kyle McCord last year, and it's like, well, is that the trend? And it's like, well, Kyle McCord wasn't bad, just wasn't good enough for what they wanted to do. And by the way, I think in the 24/7 portal rankings, Julian Sayin is number 1, Aiden Childs is number 2, and New Michigan State quarterback coming from Oregon State. So they've got their own fancy way of doing the rankings, and I think it also combines probably years left and total impact perhaps, but also the younger they are, the more opportunities they have to transfer somewhere else. So Dylan Gabriel can't go anywhere, so you're going to get the most out of him. Top 25 running backs in the nation. You've got 8 Big Ten running backs here, but let's just focus on Quinshon Judkins at 2, Nicholas Singleton from Penn State at 7, Travion Henderson at 8, and EA College Football 25 cover athlete Donovan Edwards at 10. Tom, this to me is a slap in the face to Donovan Edwards, who is on a cover of a video game. Like, come on, show some respect. I Henderson below Singleton, I'm a little surprised because Henderson is older and has more yards, but they're so close to each other, and Henderson has had injury history, so maybe that's a knock. I am surprised. I don't honestly disagree with the Donovan Edwards thing. I'm surprised that somebody else spotted this as well. Like, somebody else is like, you know what? If you look at the numbers and you look at all of the games, then put him at 10, and that might be high too.
Well, it depends on what you want to look at. I mean, you look at the game by game production from Donovan Edwards last year, and we spent all of last year wondering, is Donovan Edwards actually hurt? Because Donovan Edwards does not look like Donovan Edwards at all. And I don't know that we've officially heard that he was hurt, but Donovan Edwards has had a couple like great moments. He's had like the Francisco Cabrera, like he had a little deep cut for you. He had a couple long runs for touchdowns against Washington in the national championship game, and then you look at a bunch of the rest of his games, and it's 2 yards a carry, 3 yards a carry, and it's like, well, he busted one long one, and Francisco Cabrera had the big hit in the 1992 NLCS. So do you put him on the cover of MLB The Show 1993? I mean, you certainly could. You look at his production overall, and it wasn't great, and I don't expect his production this year to be incredible. I think he's going to be probably better, because I'm assuming, again, he probably must have been hurt last year to look the way he did for long stretches. I don't know how good that offensive line is going to be this year. I think that's going to be a step back. I don't know how great the passing game is going to be this year. I think that's going to be a step back. So, I think him at 10 behind Travion Henderson, behind Quinshon Judkins, behind Nicholas Singleton, I think that's probably representative of the production you've seen from him over the last year or so. Henderson behind Singleton, Henderson's been banged up a bunch. If Henderson stays healthy, I think he's ahead of Nicholas Singleton. Can he stay healthy? I don't know. I guess we'll find out this fall.
Yeah. And Singleton, the way he started as a freshman was fantastic, and then last year kind of took a little bit of a step back. I will say Donovan Edwards, his 3 years, has only rushed for over 5 yards a carry as a sophomore, which is, it's a little interesting, and it was much more than 5 yards a carry. It was 7 yards a carry with some really big games in there. He needs to get back to that. Top 20 wide receivers in the nation, Tom. Only 3 Big Ten guys here, and only 1 legacy Big Ten guy. Emeka Ibuka at 4, Oregon's Tez Johnson at 5, and Oregon's Evan Stewart via Texas A&M at 9. And this is where you start to get into one of the problems I have with the Big Ten is the lack of overall talent that has plagued the conference forever. And to really only have one playmaker that was in the Big Ten last year on this list is typical. I would say alarming, but alarmingly typical. So, I don't have a problem with. I think it's showing Emeka some respect to have him this high based on his year last year.
Yeah, I think he belongs on this
Mm-hmm.
list. You know, you could talk about as he should be 4, should be 6, whatever. But he certainly belongs there. I think, this is one of these things where I think by the end of the year, you might have, if you were to redo this list at the end of the year, might have Carnell Tate on there. You might have J.J. Smith on there. It's probably too early. It's probably too early to put J.J. Smith on there, especially based on when this thing probably went to press. But I think by the end of the year, you might see him sneaking on the back end of this list. You might see Carnell Tate somewhere on this list. But the overall wide receiver talent level at Ohio State or in the Big Ten is just, it has not been great. You look outside of Ohio State, and there just have not been those kind of consistent performers at that position, and that's partly the passing games over the whole, on the whole, and partly the weather and how that forces the offenses to adapt and all that kind of stuff. And part of the fact is that half of the conference is made up of the old Big Ten West, and that helps. That doesn't help there either. So this is I think a representative list of what the wide receiver talent in the Big Ten has been over the years, and Michigan's got really no one proven. Penn State lost a bunch. They have got Julian Fleming, who I think we're thinking will probably have a pretty solid year. Will he be a top 20 receiver in the nation? We'll see. But there's a lot of schools in the Big Ten where the wide receiver talent has just not really been there for years. And I look at that and I think about who's on Ohio State's non-conference schedule, and I think, boy, Tony, I think Ohio State's pass defense might have like historically great numbers this year, at least during the regular season.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that in Buckeyes tomorrow morning with the quarterbacks that they will be facing. The tight ends, they've got a top 5 list of Colston Loveland at 1, which I would be perfectly acceptable of because he's really, really good. At number 4, Luke Lachey, and Luke Lachey from Iowa, the mention there is, of course, Ohio State they missed on that one badly, going with Joe Royer over Luke Lachey. And I don't know that we need to spend any more time on that one. Let's move to the defensive line, Tom, because we got the top 12 defensive ends, top 12 defensive tackles. The Big Ten defensive ends, JT Tuimoloau at 3. Abdul Carter from Penn State moves from linebacker to defensive end. They put him at 5. Jack Sawyer at 8. The top 12 defensive tackles, Michigan's Mason Graham at 1. I'm fine with that. USC's Beryl Alexander at 8. Tyleik Williams at 9. Michigan's Kenneth Grant at 10. Jack Sawyer at 8. The disparity between him and JT in a lot of people's mind is really far. So I think having Abdul Carter ahead of him when this is going to be Carter's first time really being at defensive end is interesting. But Tyleik Williams to me might be a little low. Mason Graham is fine. I don't know. I haven't watched enough Bear Alexander. I just know he's been kind of an issue, with the free agency stuff. But I'm surprised the way Jack Sawyer finished that he's not a little higher on this list actually.
Well, I think Jack Sawyer had the start to his career has not, he was, I think he led the team in sacks in 2022, but that was with like 4.5. And then last year he was solid all year, but the way he came on at the end of the year, he was a real problem at the end of the year. And the question then just becomes, did the light come on, or was this just, hey, this was a good matchup and he got, 3 sacks in the Cotton Bowl, I think. The question is, how sustainable is that? Because this tells me they think it was a good matchup and that's it. If that was sustainable and that's what he is now, and he's starting to not necessarily be a Chase Young level pass rusher, but if you're one notch below Chase Young, that's still pretty darn good. If you're in that range, then you're probably 1 or 2 in the Big Ten, not 8. And we'll see. We don't know yet because we saw what we saw at the end of last year, and he did not play a ton during the spring because he's a veteran, and they didn't you didn't need to see Tuimoloau or Sawyer in the spring. You kind of know what you got there to a certain degree. You want to let some of the younger guys get reps, so okay. But going into this year, I think he's 8 is okay if you think that he is what he has been for most of his career, and that's if you're a top 10 pass rusher in the that's great. That's a very, very good result for your career. But if he is what he is at the end of last year, then this is going to be like, boy, that was really low. That's a bad miss, and he's a top half of the first round pick next year in the NFL draft.
I think Mason Graham is getting a ton of attention, and it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to that and how he continues to, if he continues to play as well as he has, given that it's going to be a different team that he's playing with this year with different coaching. We'll see how that goes for him. Linebackers is pretty quick here. They've got it in top 12 outside linebackers and top 12 inside linebackers. Outside, number 6 is Iowa's Nick Johnson. Nobody else from the Big Ten listed. Inside linebackers, number 2, Jay Higgins from Iowa. 5, Cal Halladay from Michigan State. 9, Carson Bruner from Washington. No surprise that there are no Ohio State Buckeyes in this one. I am a little surprised that you don't see Michigan with like an Ernest Hausman or the Barham kid from Maryland. So I don't know that we needed to spend any time on that one. Let's go to the secondary time where we can wrap up with the top 12 corners. Will Johnson, number 1 from Michigan. 4, Jabbar Muhammad from Oregon. Number 5 is Denzel Burke. Number 6 is Ricardo Hallman from Wisconsin. We're I don't know, too close to Denzel Burke. Basically, we cover him. Enjoyed talking to him. We saw how well he played as a freshman, the struggles that he had in 2022, and then stepped up last year, and really expecting him to play well. So 5 seems a little low, but I don't know that it is, just because corner, you've got Travis Hunter out there as well. So it's not just about Denzel Burke, it's about everybody else. So he can work his way into that. I think let me see. Do they have him as first team? They've got him first team all Big Ten. So I'm not going to have an issue with this one. I wonder if we're too close to Davis Igbinosun, because I never see him anywhere. He's not on any of the all Big Ten teams. And I think he's really, really good. And I sometimes I wonder, like, am I wrong? Are we wrong about this?
Well, he's someone who might get a little overshadowed by Denzel Burke being on the other side of the field, and there's a bunch of other big names on that defense. And when they put the little cutouts of the players on the graphics for the promoting the upcoming game, or even promoting how good Ohio State's defense has been this year, it's always going to be JT Tuimoloau's face and Jack Sawyer's face and Denzel Burke's face, and you're not going to see Davis Igbinosun. He is not the number 1 corner on the team, so you don't hear about him as much. But I think he's someone who, to not have him on all Big Ten teams, second team all Big Ten potentially, like, that's probably a little, that's probably not going to be reflective of what things look like at the end of the season. He is a player who is going to be a big part of what Ohio State does this year, and we'll see what what we talked earlier about the quarterbacks and the passing games that they'll be facing. I'm not expecting him to get picked on or anything like that during the course of the year, but I also don't know how much he's going to have an opportunity to make a bunch of highlight reel plays. If they're not throwing the ball at you, it's hard to get interceptions. It's hard to, make the big hits, make the big pass breakups, all that kind of stuff. So he's probably a little bit underappreciated on the all Big Ten lists. I'm okay with him not being on a top 20 list right now, but he's another guy who, let's see what the season looks like. I would not at all be surprised to see him on be on one of the All-American teams potentially by the end of the season, as people are paying more attention to him and the Ohio State defense.
Jordan Hancock, another not on either of these lists, which being the nickel kind of hurts, but I think everybody that watches understands the impact and the importance that he has. So the final thing, the top 12 safeties, Caleb Downs, number 2, Hunter Wohler from Wisconsin, number 6, Dylan Thieneman from Purdue, number 9, KJ Winston from Penn State, number 12. So Thieneman last year as a true freshman had 1,000 tackles and was an All-American. Caleb Downs at number 2 behind Notre Dame's Xavier Watts, who won the Nagurski Award last year. I did not realize that, as the nation's top defensive player. So congratulations on that one. But yes, Caleb Downs number 2. I'm not going to take any issue with that, and any of these other guys. Now, nobody from Michigan here, and nobody from you got the one guy from Penn State, but Lathan Ransom not in the top 12. I think if you ask people around Ohio State, they would say yes, definitely. But again, if this is a top 25, like the receivers and the running backs, you'd see him there for sure. But this is also a semifinalist for the Thorpe Award in 2022. So just somebody to watch that by the end of the season wouldn't shock me if he's in there if he can stay healthy.
Right, well, I think that's right there, right at the very end. I think you got into why he's not on this list because he missed basically the second half of last season. He got hurt at Wisconsin, which was Halloween weekend. And boy, you saw it in the Ohio State defense, the loss, what the impact of the loss of Lathan Ransom was. But that doesn't necessarily get credited to Lathan Ransom in everyone's mind if they were not watching Ohio State the way that probably Ohio State fans were during the course of the season. I think Ohio State fans recognized the value that he brought to that defense when you saw what it had in his absence. So yeah, I think that's part of it. And then, we kind of glossed over the linebackers because there was really no one there. That's another spot where, how confident are you that Sonny Styles or C.J. Hicks, for example, whoever is that outside linebacker, I'm guessing they're counting Wills as outside linebackers there. How confident are you that Cody Simon is not going to put together, a really strong Tommy Eichenberg kind of senior season, or that Sonny Styles or C.J. Hicks is not going to take that next step? Like, I feel like if you put that list together at the end of the year, you're going to have at least one and maybe two potentially Ohio State linebackers on that list, even though there's none there right now.
I would expect Cody Simon to be there for sure. And if this team is going to be as good as it's supposed to and it needs to be, do you need to have a second linebacker in that group that is worthy of being top 12 nationally and whatever the rankings mean? Like, Ohio State should have one of the top 12 and most impactful will linebackers in the nation. I don't know that they need to. If everything else is working around him, maybe they can get away with it. But I would expect Cody Simon, because you're the middle linebacker of one of the nation's, perhaps the nation's best defense. People are going to know you, and your name is going to be out there. It would help if they could turn his name into some sort of an animal, like the Big Cat, or the Kaiser. With Matt. Well, maybe it's like Simon says, no running here. Simon says the A gap is closed, something like that.
Mountain Dew Cody Red. I'm just spitballing here. What do you think? I was going to say Cody Blue, but I don't think that would go over real well in the Woody.
Cody Scarlet. That's but so there you go. Go find a college football magazine at your local Barnes and Noble drugstore. Do they still have go to the Rexall and see if they've got some magazines? Did you ever do that as a kid, Tom? You go to the pharmacy as a kid, the town pharmacy, and go look at the magazines in the summer?
Go to the old Five and Dime. We actually did have a Woolworth where I grew up. So, and that was not actually the 1950s. So, yeah, that was we had you could get them you could still get them at the grocery store and all that. There was always plenty of places to get print publications back in the 1990s, Tony, and nothing has changed since then.
No, actually, Tom, part of my journey of looking for the magazines this year was also looking at Kroger when I'm getting groceries, and I'm like, do you guys have magazines anymore? Like, oh, no. No,
have
sir.
What now?
Sir, this is a Wendy's. But
yeah, it's right next to the telegraph office.
Well, I do need to send a money order, so this is fantastic. Do you have any inquirers back there? Anyway, Weekly World News, if you will. They will never stop printing that. I'm sure that's got to be a winner. But anyway, that'll do it. So there you go. Go check out a magazine. It is that time of year. Go sit, getting ready for vacation. Everybody loves to read their college football magazines while sitting in the sun, or at least take pictures of them and tweet them and pretend that that's actually what they're doing. So that will do it. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, thumbs up on this video if you're watching it. We would appreciate that on YouTube. If you're listening to it, give us a 5-star rating and review. That is always appreciated as well. And of course, you can always find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Now is a fantastic time to become a member and check us out there. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.